Hello and welcome to the New Business Chat Show, the chat show to spark or fuel your own business thoughts. And as the entrepreneur's mentor, I support other business owners to start, develop, market, scale, or grow their own business, either through my own coaching or through the Master Plan program. This is the third series of my podcast, and I can't wait to introduce you to more fantastic guests. And I anticipate to share with you guests that have been there, they've done it, they've explored their own startup journey, they have the experience that I know will help others, such as yourself, to start your own enterprise, have an enjoyment in those early years, and continue running a successful business. And for today's chat, I want to introduce you to James Middleditch. Now, James, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and your LinkedIn profile said, in my career, I've worn many hats: entrepreneur, marketeer, consultant, and agency owner, all of which have lent me a distinct perspective on business and their growth plans. Now, the business that you own is Digital Group Media, and at the helm of Digital Group Media, a renowned and award-winning marketing agency in Birmingham, you've honed your expertise in brand development, digital marketing, and business management over the last 14 years. So I'm really keen to explore that a little bit more. So first of all, please do introduce yourself to our listeners, James.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's James Middleditch. I think Mike, thank you for having me on. I think you've covered a lot of it there. Um, I'm now involved in kind of two key businesses. The one that takes up the vast majority of my time is my marketing agency, which I run with my brilliant business partner, Danny Kemp. Um, and we've poured our heart and soul into that business. For me, going all the way back to 2008, and the experiences along the way with our own business, with our clients' businesses, I'd say we're from the school of the hard knocks. We've earned our stripes. We've had great successes, some failures along the way, but it's getting into the driving seat of a bunch of different businesses, which I think has really empowered us now to add a unique perspective to our own business, to other people's businesses, and then the next step for us really is to expand on that knowledge way beyond just servicing clients, but actually through getting involved with or acquiring other businesses, and that's a journey we've started now with the second business. So
Brilliant. And the second business is?
next gen music. So this is a peripatetic DJ tuition business. Essentially, you can pay to do, or you can pay for your kids to go and do things like piano or violin lessons in school. Now you can do it through DJing, which has got some really nice uptake. There are kids who just aren't drawn to traditional or classic instruments, who are absolutely excited to get behind the decks. And I have a history with music, outside of business, so it's a great business that aligns with all my sales and marketing skills. And of course, my own experience as a musician in a parallel or former life, shall we say?
No, I love all that. I love that. And obviously, we've known each other for probably just over a year now, and I've enjoyed watching the journey and watching that second business also evolve. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about your journey. And I guess my first question for you is, where did that feeling or that desire to run your own business come from? Why did you do a startup in the first place? Obviously 14 odd years ago.
Um, I'd like to give a far more inspirational explanation of how I became a businessman than I'm probably going to. I'm a completely accidental businessman, an entrepreneur. I'll try and give you the short history of it. Essentially, I went to university because I thought that was the done thing. I was studying business studies, and the course I was on was a sandwich course. So I was doing my work experience year for NatWest. I was working in a call center, and it just gave me a taste of kind of corporate life. Working for a big company just wasn't me, just not a big fan of it. And simultaneously, one of my close friends, who I hadn't seen for a couple of years because I'd been away at uni in a different city, and this wasn't a guy from a particularly academic background. It wasn't someone who you would necessarily have thought was going to go and do great things. And out of the blue, he'd evidenced some phenomenal success because he got into business. So he owned a sales outsourcing agency. He had a nice car, very nice apartment in a very nice part of town. And it just blew my mind. I thought the way to go was to join a big company, work your way up the ladder. If you're lucky, you might get a promotion. And I'd just seen how my good friend Russ had shortcutted all of that just by applying himself and his talents in the right way. So that was really what opened my eyes to being in business. And yeah, my motivation to continue with the traditional career just evaporated. I dropped out of uni. I went to go and work for Russ. Circumstances there changed over time. And initially, we decided to go into business together, which was just a continuation of the outsource sales that we'd been doing. And from there, that's how I became an accidental digital marketer. So a lot of the clients we were working with would say, "Oh, can you build an app? Can you design a logo for me? Can you do this?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I'd just say yes and figure it out as I went along. And actually, that's why the business is still called Digital Group Media. It's not the most inspired brand name, um, but it was linked to that old business all around group media and promoting trips for groups and schools and stuff. So actually, that's where that came from. So entirely accidental. I wasn't the guy at school who was selling sweets to his friends. I no, I was very much going to do it the traditional way. But my eyes have been opened, thank God.
Well, thanks for sharing that because that's exactly why I wanted to do this podcast over the years and why I choose who I choose to invite because they tell honest stories. You know, it'd be very easy to paint a very different picture from where you are now. So thanks for sharing that. And you know what I love about also what you shared is I engage with that because the universities that I support, the schools that I share, they're the universities and the schools that embrace entrepreneurship and give people a different route of thinking rather than having to go and get a job, go and get corporate world. It's not for everybody. We know entrepreneurship and business ownership is tough and it's not for everybody, but it's good to have that choice. Let's get back to day one then. So can you remember day one as DGM on, you know, you're in the seat, it's your business. What were you thinking and what were you doing?
Terror and fear. Without going into the details, because it's long in the past, essentially the main contract that I was working on as an employee for Russ's company, they pulled the rug from underneath his feet. And they said they approached me and wanted to poach me. Essentially, did I want to go and work for them direct? And just seeing how they treated Russ, it was a no-brainer. So it was a clear no. So me and Russ started our own separate entity straight away. And actually, it was a bit of a fight flight response. We had to just go straight into it. So, um, God, this is going back some time now. I remember, we. Sorry, forgive me. I'm really trying to. That day one. Forgive me on this, Mike. I'm trying to remember where I was geographically. We had offices in the jewelry quarter in Birmingham, and
Yeah.
I can't remember where this happened. Sorry, for me to go back, I have to think about where I was. But essentially, I remember we didn't have a lot of money. Um, we had to very quickly ring around all of our clients, register domain names. It was a blur. I honestly, you've opened up a chamber of my memory that had been locked away from a long time ago. But it was very pragmatic. It wasn't strategic. It was very reactionary, which isn't an ideal way to do things. I'm very much one for being strategic, thinking like customers, reverse engineering what the solutions are going to be. And at the time, it was it was self-centered. It was survival mode. It was not, hey, we're going to have a great business doing outsourced sales or advertisements for different attractions, which is what the business was at the time. It was, oh, we've lost the contract. What are we going to do for money? Do we go and find jobs or do we just start hitting the phones? And it was as simple as that. Um, I think the reason I hesitated a bit is really once it got underway, we'd moved offices, we'd set up the new brand name, and we were just going phone call for phone call. I'd make a cold call. Russ would make a cold call at the time. Um, and that was at an office we had in Redditch. So it wasn't strategic, it wasn't inspiring, it was pure survival. But actually we learned a lot from that.
And again, I love the response because That's quite often when I ask that question, people have to think back and delve back, and obviously you're going back a while as well. But ultimately, what we do at startup, isn't it, is we hustle. We hustle for the next deal or delivery of that deal or keeping the business alive from a cash perspective. And obviously, what you've seen in the maturity is we have to get past the hustle stage and get into that strategic mode that you were just referencing there. So what's been your biggest challenge in the early years, not necessarily just at startup, but in, say, for example, the first five odd years of your business? What was the biggest challenge that you faced?
I certainly wouldn't advise doing it the way that we did it. If that can be avoided, we were thrust into it. I'd say the biggest challenge was at the time being taken seriously. When you're a new entity and you don't have experience, so whilst we were experienced at selling to certain clients, our new brand, the new advertising packages and things that we were promoting were unproven, didn't have a track record. So it is hard to get past that. And a lot of people have imposter syndrome. How do you get people to know, like, and trust you? And I think that'll be true for any business. And there are practical ways to get around that. If you don't have hundreds of positive reviews straight out the gate, which you won't, what you can do is go and find ways to do project. It depends on the nature of your business. I'm not saying you should work for free, but strategically there are things you can do to get people to know, like, and trust you. Take an analogy from my music world. When I was an up and coming DJ, uh, the reason I started to get notoriety is I'd just say yes to anyone. Be like, yeah, I'll play any set, anytime. Don't worry about the money. And by doing that, that gave me an opportunity to go and play out and go, oh, actually, he's not bad. And it's the same thing for business. So in our line of work, because we do all sorts of digital marketing stuff, and there's a lot under that umbrella. But one of our core services, for example, is web development. So if you wanted to start off as a new web developer and you've got no history, just go and build an incredible website for a fictional business, for a real business, but make sure they're not abusing you and you get the buy-in. And I see a lot of ads for this where someone will redesign, say, a Disney email. They haven't been commissioned by Disney to go and do that email, but they can show off how they would do it. And suddenly people make that link. So trust and credibility, you'll easily get over the imposter syndrome if you can kind of prove you know what you're doing. So I build that foundation. Once you've got your own internal confidence, it rubs off on everything else.
Nice, nice. And it's interesting you say that because obviously it's your game as a day by day thing that you do for your customers. But it's about getting eyes on your business, about creating that awareness, isn't it? And what I see very often in the startup world is that people don't do the hard enough work to get eyes on their business or to do the awareness. They just, I guess, they start hustling, but they also have an element of hope that someone's going to find them from that side. So what's been your biggest moment that you remember in your years of running your own business, your biggest celebration that you'd put a badge on at the moment?
Um, If I had to boil it down to one kind of easy thing that we could point to, it was winning the Best Business Enabler Award at the Entrepreneur Circles Awards, because it was the most hotly contested category. There were lots of entries, and it's a credible business. It's not if we buy a table at the event, we might win an award job. And that was really I'm very proud of that because it wasn't easy to do that, and we've done a lot of good work. But actually, beyond that, it's the smaller things for me. It was buying a house, having been self-employed for however many years. See my business partner buy a house. It's seeing a client do incredibly well or win certain deals. That genuinely, this isn't just my agency
I know,
propaganda.
I know it's yeah.
The thing I get a real buzz about, the thing I'm the proudest of, is when I see someone's list of leads just growing and growing and growing because of something that we've done for them. It's unbeatable. So if I had to point to one thing, it was winning that award amongst some fierce competition and for really credible awards. But beyond that, it's just the yeah. How long have I been doing this now? Since 2008. I kind of eat what I kill, so to speak.
Cool.
just looking back at years of doing that and never taking a kind of salary or a paycheck from anyone other than myself. I'm very proud of that. Very proud.
And we know running a business, you have to wear very many hats. So, is there one hat in your business that you've worn thinking, oh, this is going to be a breeze, this will be quite straightforward, but actually in reality it's gone, oh my God, I wish I didn't have to do that.
Um, they all have their pros and cons. Got to know your numbers. Um, there are times where I'm really in that world. To every margin down to the percentage point, on every different facet of what we do. And there are other times where I'm just in operator mode and I'm just like, no, I'll check that later. Not good advice. I wouldn't follow that. You should always know your numbers. You should always be on that. Um, I guess it's the nature of being a relatively small business in terms of our headcount is we just get into our lane sometimes. So sometimes I'm in sales mode. I enjoy that. We're in growth mode, speaking to customers, meeting people, love that. Sometimes it's operator mode. So it's when I'll go deep into learning the craft. Again, we can't deliver the work we do unless we go deep and actually learn how websites work and SEO works and branding and all of that stuff. Um, in terms of all the hats to wear, I guess the HR side of things isn't my natural place. I'm not particularly keen on managing other people. I just want to work with self-starters that crack on and get it done. Again, I don't run massive teams, so we're a small business. We do have staff, of course, and we have very good staff, and have had good staff over the years, even if people have kind of come and gone. But that's not a part of business that I particularly enjoy. Perfectly happy to do it. If you've got to make sure, people are going to get 100% of their paycheck, you want 100% of their effort.
Yeah.
And it's not nice to have to pull people on that, yeah, it's part of the journey. So I'd say that's not something I particularly relish, but it's a necessary evil.
Yeah. And again, it's a common one. It's a common one. And is there a, the simple question is, why do you still run a business?
There is no other vehicle to provide to me what I want from life other than being a business owner. Um, whilst I'm accountable to a lot of clients, ultimately my progression is entirely down to me. I'm not waiting for someone to retire and get out the way in the organizational chart so I can move up. Um, if I want to earn twice as much money, it's a possibility. It might not always be easy, but there is a path to doing that. And in other um, in other walks of life, that's just not possible. If you're a policeman, that's a very valued role in society. But you want to go on nicer holidays and take more time off, you can't do it. Um, and for me, that's why I'm still in business. I've I certainly feel like in other areas of life, I've managed to achieve what I've wanted,
Mhm.
whether it was through music, whereas for other things in my youth. There are certain areas where I got exactly what I wanted. I haven't quite completed the mission in business yet. I'm well on the way, but it's not done and dusted yet. But it's having agency. It's being able to go, I can design my life like this, and you can go and do it. It's not easy, but it's possible, and that's the main thing.
Yeah. And as a family man, I know how important that is to you and all that sort of stuff. So it ticks those boxes, doesn't it? One of the things you touched upon in terms of your own introduction is you mentioned your business partner. You currently Danny Kemp, but obviously you had a business partner in the past as well. Tell us a little bit more about your thought process there, because obviously you could do what you do on your own, but you've chosen to do it with other people. What tell us about your thought process of and the experience you've had of working with other people rather than doing it on your own?
I think that's a great question and something people should give a lot of thought to. Some people say you shouldn't work with friends and family. My original business partner, we were close friends. It's no secret to say we did have a fallout at one point when we went our separate ways, but we're best of friends again, which is great. That's come full circle. We're not in business together at the moment. Never say never, might happen again. Um, and Danny actually I was a very good friend with through music originally. and it couldn't have worked out better. You can only cover so much ground yourself. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I genuinely think the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Is that the right saying? You know what I mean? Um, yeah, Danny's good at things that I'm not, and vice versa. And yeah, you've got to share the spoils of it, but we cover so much more ground than we would do solo. I think it's a no-brainer. And the new business, next gen, that's me, Danny, and Dean. And again, we're covering ground we just couldn't have done as solopreneurs. So I'm a big fan of it. I think you've got to be clear at the outset on what you're going to bring to the table and what your responsibilities are. It isn't always balanced as well. There might be times where you feel like you're putting in 90% of the effort and the other person's doing 10%. But the truth is, without their 10%, you can't do what you're going to do. Just to be clear, Danny, I don't think I do 90% and he does 10 at all. But that dynamic, it's not a fixed thing, and I can see tensions in other businesses where someone thinks, "Hang on, I'm doing all the hours," and sometimes that might be true, but it's about the value you bring. Um, you do need to go in with your eyes wide open on that front, I think. In terms of working with family or friends, um, I've been very lucky working with good friends. I think it strengthened things, but it depends on what your friendship's like with people. Family, I haven't worked with family in business much. My sister did work with us at one point. Um, but you've just got to, yeah, you've got to give some thought to it and just be clear on what everyone's role is. So, but long story short, I think it's a great idea to partner with people because I think you can just cover more ground.
Yeah, more cadence. Yep, nice.
Absolutely.
Cool. And then let's flip this over into DGM for a minute because obviously what you do as a business is you support other business owners and businesses to achieve something. Tell us a little bit more about that and what it is that you actually do and how you're helping other business owners to get eyes on their business, generate leads, revenue, etc.
Sure. I gave you the short history of how I got into business. So we started off doing ad hoc bits of work for people from graphic design to logos and even an app for a big leisure centre. Um, but from there it evolved. So we started to do websites. So I taught myself how to code sites, how to design them, and then how to make ones with databases and looking at WordPress and stuff. And then we built that, and then we're like, okay, but are they working? How do these people get found? So it sprawled from there, and what we've created is a kind of ecosystem of disciplines that I think are interconnected, and you cannot work in silos effectively unless you have knowledge or awareness of these 10 key areas. So for us, that's foundation, which is your own knowledge of your own business, your own customers. What should you be spending to acquire a customer? If you don't understand that, you're not going to fuel the tank and go and get them. So that's the first step. With that knowledge of who your buyers are and thinking like buyers, the second step for us is brand and identity. What's your brand all about? How are you different to competitors? The third discipline for us is the website. I think that is still predominantly the hub for a lot of businesses, not for all of them. It's the 24/7 touch point that everyone can have. It's your 24/7 member of staff that's representing you when you're not there in the room. Beyond that, we then have search engine marketing. So lots of people have great websites that might look great, but it's like opening a restaurant in the desert. You need footfall, you need people to see it. So search engine marketing can't really be an afterthought. You do have to build that into the website from the ground up, really, to be effective. Um, We've got our next discipline, which is content marketing. So, in order to, regardless of what the channel is, email, social media, carrier pigeon, physical newsletters, unless you've got a strategy for your content, what you're going to talk about, why you're an expert on your subject matter, you can't demonstrate thought leadership until you think about content first and then the channel second. The next discipline for us is email. So there's kind of broadcast email newsletters. There are automated emails that can be sent once people interact with you. And there are some cold email strategies that are effective in some businesses as well. The next discipline for us is social media. Again, I'm a big believer actually in people doing their own social media. I don't think agencies, third-party agencies, do a particularly good job at the execution. They can be quite good at the strategy, but the best content comes from the boots on the ground in the company itself. The next discipline then is offline. So, what are you doing offline with physical media, PR, trade shows, networking? We built our original client base by going and visiting shows at the NEC, which is just down the road from our office. Um, and we built some great relationships. And that's when DGen really started to take off originally. The next discipline, the ninth one now, I might have lost count, is insights and analytics. What's measured is improved. You need to know what to measure and how to improve it. And then the final one for us is coaching and consultancy. Who's going to keep you accountable? People like Mike, to make sure you're executing on all of this. So, what we've developed now as a business, rather than just building a website in isolation and going, I don't care what the brand is, just send me the logo. I don't care what content you're going to talk about on social media. Everyone's interconnected. So we like to have the 360-degree view on all of that. Because if we're going to be effective in any one of those areas, we do need to have an understanding of the whole. So our kind of main thing that we do now are these things called sales and marketing roadmaps. So we'll spend a couple of days with the business, we'll do a deep dive with usually with the leadership team, but also with customer facing staff and just figure everything out about that business because there's always nuggets of gold in there. And off the back of that, we'll then create a whole sales and marketing strategy with a bunch of recommendations tailored to that business, categorized by those different disciplines. And then we'll sequence them in terms of ease of execution, importance. Because it's quite common for us now. Someone will come to us and go, I'd like a website. We go, cool. Um, but have you considered this? And actually, most people that will stop them in their tracks and they go, actually, yeah, I really do want the roadmap, so that then they can, long after the website's built and launched, they've actually got the agency themselves to go and execute on it. And that's where people get the results.
Brilliant, love that. And thanks for sharing that because not only did you just share with us your ecosystem of what you offer, but you shared a numerous amount of tips about, if people listen back to that, there's a number of reasons why they may be considering, those elements of your ecosystem, not necessarily just to engage you, but to, the reason why they should do it and do it properly. Is there one like your number one tip around marketing that you'd share with anybody?
You have to have compelling offers that meet people where they are. You can't just scream, buy my stuff. You've got to pique someone's interest where they are at that moment in time. Um, an example, so a project that we're working on at the moment, and this is true for a lot of services-based businesses. And in the modern age, people want to understand pricing. They want to know what might drive the cost up, what might drive the cost down, before they want to vet suppliers or companies who might we use to get the garden done or anything like that. People do just want to have an understanding of pricing first. So a common example for us, and it does depend on the business type, just build an instant quote generator. Like even if it's a ballpark price, if you satisfy that consumer need and urge to go, how much might this cost before I dig any deeper? It's an easy win. If the only call to action you can offer is get in touch and we might give you a price at some point after you've had a sales conversation with us, you're just rejecting traffic and people and leads. So create something truly compelling. Of the campaigns that we manage, the most successful ones have got really attractive offers or ways for people to interact on their own terms that inform them. And then once they're on your list, you can follow up and do what you need to do. That's the main thing. If you don't have a compelling offer in place and you're listening to this now, please just spend 5 minutes, go and brainstorm with ChatGPT. What might be an irresistible offer for my customers? That's the best starting point.
Love that. Love that. And we're coming towards the end of the recording for today. But if there was one tip that you'd give to a younger self of and they were starting up their business again, what would that tip be?
Oof. Know your numbers, think like your customers, and you get more of what you tolerate. So
Good one.
about that with who you work with, who you work for. People will treat you how you train them to treat you. You can lose a lot of valuable hours, weeks, or months if you don't give some good thought to that.
Brilliant. And we've talked backwards a little bit in terms of the past. What does the future hold for DGM?
Um, At the moment, it's mostly roadmaps. Yes, we still do all the implementation stuff that comes after the roadmap, but our core focus is roadmaps and growing the team to help us deliver that. It is a unique skill set. As I say, a lot of people work in silos, so it's not easy to find people that have got that well-rounded knowledge, but it's not impossible either. So it's mostly roadmaps in that sense. And then we've got big plans for next gen music as well. We've already opened up the territory. We've hired a load of new DJ tutors, so that's going really well down in the southeast. So we'll be opening up new territories across the country as well.
Wow. Full on. Look forward to hearing a bit more. But I think what I love about the roadmaps is the roadmaps is a service and an experience that your customers gain, but it helps you to deliver the expertise you can in the best way. So yeah, brilliant. Awesome. Well, thanks, James. Thanks for sharing your story with us. Thanks for sharing some tips there as well. Just for the listeners' sake, just tell them how they would contact you if they were interested in finding out a little bit more about you or your business.
Absolutely. Best way to get in touch would be to visit digitalgroupmedia.com. We do have an interactive tool on there, which is the Sales and Marketing Health Check. If you click the button and you answer those questions, it will give you a score of competence in each one of those areas. It will give you some tailored advice depending on what your particular score is. That's a great way. There's no hard sell, there's no upsell or anything like that. Just give it a go. And if you see value in that and you think that you might need more help from us, get in touch. James at digitalgroupmedia.com. Always happy to have a chat and to guide people in the direction I think will help them the most.
Brilliant, James. Thanks very much. Certainly, from my perspective, a recommended conversation for anybody that may be interested in exploring more. So thank you for listening to the latest edition of the New Business Chat Show. As always, I hope you found the content interesting, thought-provoking, and useful in the startup and the development of your own business. Please do subscribe to the podcast, and when I release my next episode, you'll therefore be one of the first to know.